So I'm Scott Hunter, Microsoft. You already met Paul in the keynote.
Hey, everybody.
And our plan was to show some Aspire stuff that you normally don't see. But I'm curious, who in here has used Aspire? Better than normal. Awesome. That's good. So, Maddie over
glad
here.
you have.
Maddie's the product manager for Aspire. She raises her hand. I'm like, come on. So I think we were just going to show some interesting ways of publishing Azure resources, doing some CI/CD with Aspire.
Love it. Maybe a little advanced functions.
And then Paul works on the functions team at Microsoft, and we introduced something called Flex Consumption Functions last year, which is a really high scalable functions. But you might not know, you can actually run functions in Aspire. And so Paul's got a really cool demo where we're going to take Azure Functions, run it in container apps on Aspire, and then from that,
we're going to go nuts from
we're going to scale it.
Yep.
And it's kind of amazing because Flex Consumption scales pretty crazy by itself, but even inside of container apps, the scalability is really, really good.
Absolutely. You can get thousands of instances in a minute. It's pretty cool.
And so, so I think we'll show some load testing as well.
Yep.
We'll end with Paul's thing because it's the most nerdy, techie thing we have. Or maybe we can end with some, we can show some of the newer Aspire stuff that
this could go anywhere.
Is brand new. We don't really know what we're going to do here. So I have copies of everything in the cloud in case things don't work, because you never know with demos. Let's just get over there, go to the portal. So how many of the folks in here have been actually publishing your Aspire apps to Azure? Anybody? Almost no hands. How many people in here have used Aspire with like CI/CD? Okay, good. Good, that's good. That means we have stuff to show. So what I'll do is I will just jump over here, go into my source folder, and we can do a kind of a deep dive on Aspire publishing. So let me zoom this up a little bit. So I'm just going to create a Aspire starter app here. This is just our default template, so but I don't really care about the app too much here. I care more about how you publish it, and I want to show you how you publish it, and then I want to show you some details, and then in the new Aspire stuff that's going on, I might have Maddie come up for 2 or 3 minutes and talk about how where we're going is a little different than what I'm going to show. But you've already seen, I can go over here and just launch the app. Give it a second to load here. And I'll just do run without debugging. I'll choose C#. And I'll choose my app host. This is what you would do with Aspire today. Sure, it doesn't really matter. Just want to show the app runs locally. And if you've never seen Aspire before, one of the cool aspects of Aspire is it's designed for multi-part .NET projects. So you might have a front end, a back end, you might have a JavaScript front end. It supports all those scenarios, and out of the gate, you get a cool dashboard that lets you see the logs, see the telemetry, see the errors from both your front end and back end. If you've not used Aspire in the room, every time I talk about Aspire, I like to talk about this, that it does not require you to go rebuild everything from scratch. You don't have to start with an Aspire application. I'm not going to do it today, but you can literally take Visual Studio or VS Code and go into any existing ASP.NET project and make it into an Aspire project. And so I would tell you, if you've not tried it, try that. So it runs locally, great. We'll stop this. And I'm going to show AZD. That stands for Azure Developer CLI. It's a tool that you install. If you're in Visual Studio and you right-click and you publish an Aspire application, behind the scenes, it's actually running AZD. And so I'm going to run AZD init. I like to show this from the command line because I like you to know what actually is happening behind the scenes. If you actually launch this in Visual Studio, it's doing this for you, you just don't see it. And so I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to show how to kick publish off, and then I'm going to show what it's saying here is it went and found the app in here. But first off, this is where I'll laugh at Maddie a little bit here. I get this limited mode warning. And so I'm going to just cancel and exit because of that. You're going to get that too. And I don't know if Maddie, if we plan to change the templates. So this is just built in the templates. I know it kind of forces you towards a deployment type. But what that error is saying is, if I go back and look at my Aspire project, and if you've, the app host is the magic of an Aspire project. And I'll just talk about the app host for a second. An app host in Aspire project is literally infrastructure as code. And so what I'm saying here is I've got a builder. I've got a couple of projects here. I've got an API. And you can see that I take my API service equals builder.add project. I've got my web front end. My web front end depends on the API. And so you can see right here that I've got this with reference to the API service. And notice that we also have a wait for API service. That means if the web front end starts up too fast, we don't want the web end to start up too fast. We want to make sure that API project is actually running first, because if the web front end starts up and the API service isn't running yet, it's going to fail, and your customer's going to get errors.
So I don't have to build my own probe anymore to get something like that.
Yes.
I know with Docker files, you have to go do this much just to get that.
The early versions of Aspire did not have the wait for.
Yep.
And so we used to have all these issues where the whole thing would kind of crash for the first minute or two before it came up. But what was happening there is, and I'll show you all the details of how publishing works, but when it looked at this thing, our default for publishing a Aspire project is Azure Container Apps. And the reason we do that by default is we think it's the best choice out of the box. If you're a Kubernetes customer, we're going to have a solution for you as well. But Container Apps, which actually runs Kubernetes, you just don't have to manage all the Kubernetes stuff. And so you get what we call an environment. And inside of that environment, you can put many containers. And each of those containers, you can decide what the network rules are. And so something else you're going to notice here is, notice that it says with external HTTP endpoints. This is super important. That means we are telling the container app environment that this container can be made public. Notice that we do not have that on my API service, which means when I run this in the cloud, the API is not public visible at all. You're getting that feature from the container app. But what it's complaining about here is you see my API, you see my web front end, you don't see my container app environment. And so it wants me to go and fix that. And so I will just poke Maddie while she's here. Maddie, why is this not built in? Why do I have to do this? Yes.
Well, hi, everybody.
Product manager, Aspire.
Yeah, PM for Aspire. Thank you. Thank you. That's a good question, because although we love Azure, you don't have to deploy to Azure, which is probably the /1 misconception we hear about Aspire. So a lot of you say, oh, we want to use Aspire, but we don't deploy to Azure. Or we have some totally bespoke CI/CD pipeline that you can't just give your DevOps people new code. They will actually take you out back, and they won't be happy with you. So with Aspire, we bring a set of opinions. We call them the integrations. Those are the NuGet packages, like that one that you pull in that you .NET add, but you don't have to use them. And so Azure, we work with the Azure team very closely. Scott and Paul are both big Aspire fans, so obviously everything works really well with Azure. Yep. But we also have Docker Compose now. We have the same type of package that just exports a bunch of Docker Compose files. We're working on vanilla Kubernetes. We're working with some of the folks at DigitalOcean to build one for their app platform. We've worked really closely with the folks at AWS to build one for their CDK. And so if you don't want to use Azure, the Azure native tools and stack, or if you're on a multi-cloud scenario, maybe you have a front end on Vercel or whatever it is, Aspire can still handle that. We don't lock you in. And that's why we give it to you as packages. And that's why it's not built into the template. Although we should probably have an Azure Hearts Aspire template.
We should actually, we should probably do that, and we should actually probably move all the Azure Aspire packages to their own repo, so they're not tied. We don't want to tie Aspire to Azure. We want to make sure Aspire is a technology that can be used.
Have an extension, I guess, at that point.
Yeah. It's building blocks. That's why we always say building blocks, not black boxes. So we also have a CLI command in Aspire now for publishing and deploying. So if you don't want to use AZD, you can use the Aspire CLI to publish or create the artifacts, publish, or deploy, push them up to whatever the cloud works. And we've built a couple of those integrations, but we've also had a bunch of people build their own. So you can totally customize your output from the Aspire app host that way.
I use Aspire as a tool all the time, even for my own local development,
Yeah.
just to kind of enhance my running app. So even without using the whole runtime, I just love the tooling.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
So if we go back and look at this error, what the error is telling me is that because I don't have the container app in my app host, if I want to configure any settings on the container app, I can't do it in the app host file.
Right.
And so all I did is I added a package for container apps, and I added this one line, container app environment equals builder, blah, blah, blah. And that means now I can do things like with Azure Log Analytics Workspace, I can set those things in my app host now.
Right.
And so that's what that complaint is in AZD is, hey, if you do this, you can't use IAC, infrastructure as code, for the actual container app environment. You can do it for everything else, but not that. And so the error is, go back to your app and add that, which I did.
And anything you can describe in Bicep for an Azure deployment, you can describe in the app host on the resource too. So we expose all of the things basically just as properties on an object, which means you can not even have to touch Bicep at all if you don't want to.
Yeah, I know my friend over here, Paul, he is an amazing Bicep author. I've actually sat in a hotel room with him with 100,000 lines of Bicep before a demo one time, and I'm like, how did you do that? I am way more, I love to explain what resources I want in app host and call it good.
I'm just going to have to get a new gig.
Yeah.
It'll be all right.
I can IntelliSense. I don't know.
Okay.
Tab.
So what I did there is I went to AZD and I said, I gave it a unique name, and now I'm actually ready to go. If I do AZD up, it will actually go provision all my Azure resources for me and get my app fully running in the cloud. I can start that. But before I do that, let's see what else we have here. Notice that when I did that, I got an Azure file. And if I go look in my VS Code, and I drill into there, there's a couple things here. There's an environment variable. There's some config. There'll be more in a second, but there's a config.json. And so it's basically just some resources that are made as we start figuring out what your app actually looks like. If you want to really know how this actually works into the scenes, we should just do an AZD up just for fun, just so people see it. Yeah. And so this is going to do all the Azure things you would expect. It's going to go, once again, look at my application. It's going to go behind the scenes. We're actually creating the Bicep on your behalf. You don't have to see it unless you want to see it. So it's not going to ask me what my subscription is. It's going to go ask me for a location. I shouldn't be using East, but I am. And then it's going to start building Bicep for me. But I don't have to see any of this stuff. If you're in Visual Studio, you right-click. If you do this, you don't see it. But you can. And so I can actually run a command, azd infra generate, and that command will then create all those Bicep resources right in my face for me to go see and edit if I want to.
Right.
It gives you control, which is good.
So you have full control. You have as little control or as much as control as you want. But I would still say, for the most part, you really want to stay inside of that app host and just say, I want these services. While we're waiting for this, I can show something else. Is behind the scenes, while Maddie was talking, I went and actually added a package to my app host. And if I go and say, look at the NuGet packages, I might still have it in the clipboard. I don't. So let me just go steal it from my Notepad file again. I'll steal the first part of this, aspire.hosting.azure. So if I go back here and right-click on my app host again, and I manage NuGet packages, aspire.hosting.azure. And I press return. Now you can see I can add a storage account. I can add a key vault. I can add a Cosmos DB, a service bus, a cognitive service, an app insights, a SQL, the app containers that we already did, a Redis, Postgres SQL, app configuration. These are various Azure Search, if you're doing AI, SignalR, Webhub Sub, Dapper, static web apps, lots of stuff here. So what we've done is there's a package for every service that we have support for in Aspire. All you have to do is add one of those packages, and then you'll add something in the app host to say what that package, like in this case, no, don't do that to me.
It's open.
It is. You're
Yeah,
right.
I got you.
I don't have one here, but I could add a Redis cache. I'll show a Redis cache in a second. But you have a package for each of these things. One of the other things that Aspire does that's really cool, in my opinion, is I don't know who in here knows what managed identity in Azure is? Not very many hands. How about Key Vault in Azure? Way more hands. So one of the things, we'll do a demo in a second. The next demo will be, I will add a Redis cache to this thing. When I add that Redis cache, what would we have done in the past as a .NET developer? You'd go to one of your settings files and you paste a connection string in. Terrible idea. We just went through Security Forward initiative at Microsoft. Connection strings are banned. If Paul and I have one in our repos, we get emails from the, saying we'll be.
Couple facts. We actually ran a scan tool. Can anybody guess the percentage of apps that had some kind of secret?
They scan our GitHub accounts, by the way.
It was 100%. 100% had to be mitigated. And then we actually fixed, like what he's about to do, we fixed 1.1 million apps last summer to use managed identity.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
when I create a Redis cache in Azure, I don't have to worry about a connection string, because what's going to happen is Aspire, the infrastructure as code, is going to, Redis cache is one that does support managed identity. It's going to create a managed identity on my behalf. It's going to associate the application with the managed identity, and there is no connection string at all for Redis. It just says this container is allowed to talk to Redis, and when it goes and talks to Redis, it just works. And there's nothing to ever be stolen, nothing there.
It's kind of like OAuth, right? It's like just a
Yeah.
token. It gets rotated, short-lived.
Yeah.
So you can never do anything wrong,
Yep.
is what I would say.
Don't say that.
Well, you're right.
But
I
and managed
can.
identity works with everything now. So
Yeah,
It used to be like, well, but now it really
yeah,
does.
and it also does the same thing for agents. Like that's the big story now, is getting the permissions right, and Foundry can be really hard, especially if you're trying to connect to it from an app that's in a container and not just open to the internet. And so as you start to explore more AI stuff in your app, the Aspire managed identity stuff makes it so much easier. I don't think I know how to do it by hand anymore. So
I'm not going to wait for this to actually finish, because it might take a while, and so I'll just go look at my resource groups here. I've got one of these already stuck up here. I think it's just test. And so when I did this publish, what I actually got is I got a container app, I got a managed identity, I got a container app environment, a container registry, a log analytics workspace, and my app. And so that single AZD up didn't just, and before, right-click publish in Visual Studio just gave you one app in the cloud. Now you're getting an entire set of apps. I can go drill into my front end in Azure. And notice that here, I've got this amazing open dashboard. That same dashboard you saw for my local running, it's available in the cloud. So the same exact experience you get running on your local machine, you get running in the cloud as well. And you might be asking, Azure has other features. It has lots of logging features, actually. The only negative of using our dashboard is in memory dashboard. It will run out of, stuff will fall out at some point. If you're looking for weeks of data, you're not going to get that. But I get a great dashboard here. I can actually open my web front end, and I can prove that point as well. If I go and find my API service and I try to open it, oops, doesn't work. Because I didn't put that with HTTP endpoints in my app host. I told it to make the API private. And so my API is private, my web end's front end, I'm good to go.
I guess that's good network isolation. It's by default fenced.
yeah,
So-
you don't have to build your own VNets if you just stick within a container app environment. It's very nice. Very nice.
So how much time do I need to leave for you, Paul? I've got two more I want to do.
About 10 minutes.
You're not 10 minutes, 15 minutes.
I could do 20.
Okay.
All right, 30.
Okay, so let's go and jump into another folder. And we'll do the same kind of thing again. Oops, let's go there first. And let's zoom in a little bit. I want to show CI/CD. So we always laugh on the stage and say, I don't want you to right-click publish. How do you do CI/CD with this stuff? And we make it really easy to do CI/CD, and even better, we make it easy to do it with, once again, good auth as well. So I'll go in here, .NET new, Aspire starter. I'm not going to fix the container app environment thing this time. I'm just going to go leave it like it is. So I've just created a sample app again.
Huh.
I don't
Well,
like
that's
that last one.
I got a
There
package
you go.
fail there. I'm just going to tell it to,
You're in the path. Interesting. It's not my fault.
well, guess what I happen to have as well? I happen to have one of these already done as well.
Oh,
So
I was going to say, do you have the Aspire CLI?
I do have the Aspire CLI as well.
Do Aspire new?
Um,
I'm going to guess you have a global config for NuGet or something that's
Yeah.
no, I don't have any of that.
none of that.
You just saw me do an Aspire
Just
new
the
earlier.
internet?
Yeah. Aspire new.
Oh,
Starter template.
good catch.
So I have a talk this afternoon where we'll talk about the Aspire CLI and the more of the vision-y stuff. This is definitely the advanced talk, but Aspire CLI is the best. Except for that, it puts it in the nested folder, so you have another test folder in your test folder.
Even the
That's
colors
fine.
are better, Patty. Magenta. How cool is that?
Yeah, isn't it cute? Are you?
Well, I think my internet, I'm not on the internet anymore. That's what, there we go.
Thank God. Okay. See, not my fault. Thank you.
I have a backup for you, sir.
That doesn't work.
Oh,
I have power and I have HDMI, so I've used both my ports.
well, shit.
Exactly.
That sucks. Yeah. That's weird. It lets you get so far into it before it checks.
So we'll just do one more since we've tried this a few times. We'll go back to where we first started. Maybe that's why that publish took so long.
That would probably be
I
why.
think the
Internet
Wi-Fi's
goes away.
wide open.
There we
So
go.
we're back here again. I'm going to do the same thing I did before, AZD init. And this time I'm going to use a different command for this. Didn't type it right, but oh well. And this time I'm going to do AZD config your, or pipeline configure. Where's it, pipeline config? And so people always ask me, every time I demo this, I'll be done demoing this, and they're like, does it support Azure DevOps? So you have two choices here, GitHub or Azure DevOps. They both work. And so I'm going to do the GitHub version of it right now. And so instead of doing that AZD up I did before, I can do AZD configure pipeline, and a bunch of things happen. It's going to ask me for my subscription again. It's going to ask me for a location again. And now it's going to say, do you want to deploy .yaml? Yes, I want one of those. And because I just did right from the command line, I don't have a Git repository here, so it's, do you want a private Git repository? My answer is going to be yes, I want one of those. And now it's going to say, do you want me to hook your local repository up to GitHub? And I want to do that as well. And that's fine. And now this is where things are cool. If you ever use GitHub Actions or Asdo pipelines, somehow GitHub has to have access to your Azure subscription so it can actually create resources and publish stuff for you. And so this is going to create, once again, a managed identity for me on my behalf that's going to connect my GitHub to my Azure subscription in a very secure way. Create a new one.
That's pretty. We used to have to like hard code tokens. Now you can use OpenID Connect, just OAuth.
Yeah.
And I'll say create a new resource group. Sure, that's fine. And what this is going to go do is it's going to go do all the work that I was describing before. It's going to create that managed identity. And then I'll show this on a completed one. For GitHub Actions to work, a whole bunch of environment variables have to go exist in your GitHub repo. And so as you're seeing it create each of these things, it's going to go take, I think the MSI is just a GUID, if I'm right, Paul?
It is, yeah. It's a client ID.
It's a client GUID. And so you're going to see it go and do a bunch of these things. And as it's doing each of these, the Azure environment today, location, all those things, those are being put into my GitHub repo on my behalf. And now it said, do you want me to commit the changes we just made, which will kick off an action? And I'm going to say yes. And then I'm going to flip and show you one of these that already has been done.
Quick FYI, Octopets, which I showed you last hour, I deployed it exactly using this approach.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So let's go show what this looks like over here. I did one of these earlier. So this is my GitHub repo for one of these I did a while ago. And I can do a couple things. You can go look at my actions. It's going to go show the action that ran. I don't want to wait for this to happen. You've already seen one publish happen. But you can see that it basically set up the job, it checked out, it installed AZD, the same AZD I did, because it's running the same command in the cloud. It actually installed .NET in the VM. It logged in with those credentials I said, provisioned all the Azure resources. It went and built and deployed the application. And so, when this command over here is complete, you'll see the exact same thing. At this point, is you just go to your repo, you make a commit to the repo, it's going to kick this off, and your app's going to go do this. So at this point, Paul and I could actually be sharing the repo together.
Yep.
Both of us could work on the project, but it's that easy to make this work. We make it super easy for you to do that. And I think the
nerd out moment too. Like, not only is it easy, but because you checked in the infra as code, we actually can take control and use the right network settings, use the right credentials. So I love it that you just keep on going and you're not stuck in the easy part.
Oops, I didn't want to do that. I want to go over here and show variables. And so you can see it did populate all those things.
No secrets.
Huh?
There's no actual secrets, which I love.
Yes. And so I think this is pretty cool, pretty amazing. I'll do one more, and then I'll let Paul do his crazy thing. For the final one, I don't want to start from scratch. I don't want to spend too much time. Let me just go and open one of these that I already have running as well. You can see this actually finished. So let's go into, I think I put these in Aspire. So let's go into Redis. So one of the other things that's going on here is, we talked about before those packages that exist. In this case, I've got an Aspire application, and I've actually added a Redis cache. One of the cool things about Aspire is what happens today if you want to go have a SQL database, like SQL Server, or Postgres, or a Redis cache. Many of you might actually go and just install Redis on your machine, or go install Postgres on your machine. I hate doing that stuff. I don't want my machine to be touched by anything. And so one of the cool features of Aspire is each of these things, like add a Redis, if I run it locally, it's not going to actually go, Scott, please install Redis. It's going to run it in a container. And so if I go over here and run, start without debugging, get going here. Now you can see things are starting. You can see unhealthy as it's booting up. It's waiting for all these things to actually get running. There's this Docker thing over here. Hopefully I've got Docker running. I do. And so what you're going to see here is Aspire is going to go and actually install any of my local requirements as containers on Docker. And so I can just delete them when I'm done. They don't actually hurt my machine at all. And that's how you get that nice local run experience. I want to show, slowly booting up here. Maybe I am plugged in. There you go. It's all running. If I then publish this application to the cloud, it's going to do something. We'll go to the portal and show one of these I already published. So let's go back to portal. Close some of those out. And I've got one of these. It's this one right here. It's kind of important to show this. So what happens here, if I publish this to Azure, we don't use the Azure Redis service that we have in Azure. It actually runs any containers that you have. One of the benefits of container apps is you can just run your own containers. Paul's going to show a container where he's put some custom stuff into it in just a second. But inside of here, I thought it was my Redis one. Oh, yeah, there it is. There's my cache. My cache is just another container app. So it actually, all it did is went to container apps and said, go pull the Redis image from Docker and run it inside of the container app. But I don't really want to do that. In a real world, I would much prefer to run my Redis using the managed Redis that we have in Azure, because that has got resiliency built into it. If it crashes, it's going to be updated automatically, all those types of things. How would I make that change? So to make that change, what I would do, and I'm just going to go back and flip to one of these that I have running. Let's stop this thing. And close this out. I've already built one of these where I showed you earlier those patches. All those packages. So I've got a Redis manage here. And so all I did for this one is I went and installed that package. If I go look at my app host here, I look at dependencies, I look at packages, you're going to see that I installed Azure Redis. This time I installed Azure Redis. And so in my code, all I did was change, close that. All I did is change the add Redis to add Azure Redis Enterprise. I gave it a name. And note, I put .run as container. What that means is when I run it locally, it runs as a container. But when I put it into Azure, it's going to give me a full managed Redis Azure cache. So what would happen if I ran this? If I ran this for the very first time, if I took this off, this is another cool aspect of this tech. Let's say I take this off. If I run this locally, and it might not work because I've actually already published this before, but let's see if it'll actually do it. What's going to happen is the Azure, the Aspire portal dashboard you saw, it's going to go, I can't find a real Redis, and so it's going to ask me to make one. And it's going to ask me what my subscription is, what my resource group is, what all those things are. I'm going off the rails a little bit here, so we'll see if this actually works. It might. I've already created one of these things, so it might actually know that it's actually got one. But let's see what it says.
0 errors. It must be done.
So this is perfect. Look at this. Because I told it I didn't want to run as an emulator, I didn't want to run as a container, it means I want to develop locally with a real Azure resource. And so before, what you do is you go to the portal, you'd have to do all the goop. I don't have to do that. I can go right here and say, here, I can select my location, I can select my subscription. I'm not going to paste my subscription ID in here. I can select my resource group, and the local Aspire dashboard will go create that resource in the cloud for me on my behalf.
That's awesome.
So the cool thing about this is you don't have to know about key vaults, you don't have to know about managed identity, you don't have to know about any of these things. If I go look at the version of this I published one of these as well. Let's go look at this. Here's a Redis managed. And so now I've got, here's my Azure Managed Redis cache. So if I publish that project, I'll get a proper Azure Managed Redis, and I get all the right identity and all that kind of stuff for me. And now I'm using the proper service. And so once again, I never wrote ARM bicep to do that. Maybe what I should do before I quit here is I should do AZD infra, and what is it?
Synth? Or
No, it's not synth anymore, it's generate.
emoji.
So what if you're in the crowd and you're like, I don't want this magic stuff to happen. I don't want this infrastructure as code to go do stuff for me. You can also run azd infra generate, and that's going to generate all the bicep files and stuff that you might want to, and it's pissed off. And the reason it's pissed off is because the app is actually running.
I believe we do Terraform also, if Terraform's what you prefer.
So what happened there was it was going to go try to generate this stuff. The app is running, and so it just said, nope, I can't do that while the app is running. And so now there's this infra folder, and you see I have an API service. I've got my web front end, my web identity, all these things. I've got all the bicep files created on my behalf. So this is the stuff that actually happens behind the scenes to make all that published stuff work. And I think it's really important that we don't just do it magically. It's all out there. If you want to go, after you run that infra generate, you can go start editing these bicep files, and we will honor those changes. So with that quick run-through of all the CRUD, I want Paul to show us something crazy here, which is the ability to run run functions in container apps.
Sure. Let's go a little nuts. Thanks, Scott.
There you go, sir.
Thank you, thank you. Let's grab all the cable bric-a-brac here. All right.
So if you don't know, Azure Functions is a very interesting tech. If you've ever tried Azure Functions in your development, the runtime for Azure Functions can run on your local machine. So when you actually install, if you want to build an Azure function in Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, we're actually running the real functions runtime on your machine. If you want to go run functions in, say, Azure Kubernetes, you can run it there as well.
Totally.
And so what Paul's literally going to do is take that function runtime and run it in a container or multiple containers
Yes.
inside of container apps.
Yeah, that's a good segue. So let's take a look. I'm going to, first of all, let's open a folder in VS Code. And all I've done, so Scott, you showed the starter, the Aspire starter.
Yep.
I like to start with the Aspire starter. And then I made a folder called function. And within the function folder, I just do a func init. That's kind of our starter for functions. And I picked HTTP. And I just wrote a couple .NET functions. So the first one, this is very Hello World-ish, but I want one HTTP API.
We should poke for a second and add a little bit more context here. Azure Functions is a way to run APIs at high scale. And so if you build an API as part of one of your projects, not only can you run it at high scale, it also only runs, if it's not running, it's not running.
Exactly.
And so you're only paying for the,
right?
It's full serverless. You're only paying for it when you're using it. So I think we should add the intro that the benefit of functions is that it has some other cool features, some bindings and stuff where you can say when...
I'm actually showing it here. Like, I always think of functions as event-driven. Now, the event could be a webhook or it could be an HTTP API, but look at this. Like, every event source you can think of, if I'm doing streaming, I've got event hubs. If I'm working with big files, we've got blob storage, database events, you could do Cosmos.
So what blob storage means is, here's how this works. You put a binding on your function. When I drop a file into the blob storage, your function calls and you process that blob storage.
Yep, and to Scott's point, the function just executes while that one event is running, which saves you cost, right? We do all the work to we keep a bunch of warm machines around, so it's
like a great example would be, let's say you uploaded a photo to storage and you want a function to go put a watermark on it so you know that it's one of your photos.
Totally.
You could do that exact scenario, and then I would just go grab, and it would then move the picture to a different blob storage. Yep. That's an easy scenario that you could do with functions.
Yeah, another even in crazy one, like what we showed last hour with the agents, a lot of the data ingestion we see our customers do is also using functions. You just kind of keep firing data in. And that's why I also think Aspire and Maddie and functions are best friends, because it's all about dependencies, right? Look how many dependencies you'd have to think about and automate bringing in. But with Aspire makes bringing a dependency so easy, right? It's just add database, add cache, and off you go. Okay, so let's go.
And so you went to command line, Paul, and did func init? Is how you actually
Yeah,
that?
I did a func init, and now I've got just an ordinary function. And I wrote just a little bit of code. And one thing, let's geek out on this even for a second. So functions used to have a programming model that felt a little bit different to .NET developers, but we did work over the last year, and we support full ASP.NET now. So now you're seeing iAction result. You're seeing just things you'd expect. If I look at, this is a get API, which is like ultra simple, but let's look at a post. So now post, we're taking a data payload. We understand C# POCOs. We're even using model binding, right? So we can bind right to the body, deserialize right to the object. We're not using Newtonsoft or any JSON stuff.
So without changing my web APIs very much, I can basically paste them into a function and get the super high scale and get the serverless aspect.
And people, we show that sometimes, that if you have a controller that won't scale too well, you can throw it on a function, and then that one piece will really scale out a lot. So we've got a couple really simple functions, right? And if I were just at the command line, what I would normally do, so let's make sure I'm in the right place. CD function, singular. Make that a little bigger. If I say func start, Scott, you mentioned this. Functions is a runtime, and just with our own CLI tool, func, we call that the core tools, we can run a real function locally, but we can run it anywhere in the world too in the cloud. So this is the normal experience for functions. I'd say func start, the runtime starts up, and now I've got two real endpoints. Right? So here we go. Hello world, and we're hitting that endpoint. Now to Aspireify it, and I have the actual real world doc up here. So we can start from an Aspire project, and then we can just add the package hosting.azure.functions. It's in pre-release now, but hint, 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 very soon it will be GA and fully released. What I've done for you all, actually, by the way, team, I hope you're watching, because I'm promising right now we're going to make a template for this. So I really want you to get going. I hope everyone live is watching this. But meanwhile, just go, this is a good one to take a picture of. If you just want a ready-to-go Aspire function that's set up right, just grab this one. I'll give you a second, you can grab that. It's also, if you like easy links, aka.ms/Aspire function. All right, so anyway, so back to the function. So this is just an ordinary function. You can put any function code you want in here. Now, what this template will do also is it's going to set up the Aspire project, the app host. I think of this project, I mean, you guys correct me, it orchestrates all the pieces, all my dependencies of a complete distributed app. So I could have lots of functions. I could have a function in a web app, like all the things. And mechanically, so we brought in the functions package. These days, 9.5.1, that's the right version to be on, that or later, right? We don't want to be on the older.
Once again, it was the point I made earlier. Aspire.hosting.azure will show you all of the services that we support.
It's really simple. We're just bringing in this SDK. And at this point, really, this is all the code you need.
What's in your app host, Paul?
My app host, let's look at that. Boop.
I meant your app host.cs.
Oh, that's where I was going, sir. The program CS. This one?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is not a lot of code to look at, and I love that. So basically, we have a name with the extension. We now have a builder called Add Azure Functions Project. Your functions that are referenceable DLLs or that are in scope in your project, you can just see them, and I see that function called HTTP. That's my Hello World one. And Scott taught us this earlier.
Made it public.
We made it public, and that's really it. So now, we'll go back to the command line. We'll go to app host. All right. And now it's just a .NET application. So I can say .NET run. And instead of running just the function, I'm going to run the entire Aspire application, all the dependencies.
Full dashboard as well.
Full dashboard. All right, and this is cool. So it's got all these kind of helpful links. Oh, that's a little too big almost. But so I can see we've got that public endpoint, and within it, it's a little easier to see this way. You can see that it started the function almost like a microservice, right within it. And then I can hit the, oh, apparently that was the wrong one. There we go. And so here's the running function, and then I can hit it on a route, HTTP GET. And everything's now working through Aspire. And one thing I love, you kind of mentioned, there's lots of logging stories. I love the Aspire one because it's almost like I have a ring buffer of exactly what's happening inside your function or your microservice all the time. And yes, it's an in-memory ring buffer, so you lose some of it. But sometimes you actually don't send everything to your monitoring system. But for debugging purposes, I have it all here, so I love it.
If you're running a multi-part app, being able to go look at the console log for all the pieces of your app running is just amazing. One of the best parts of Aspire.
And then check this out. Because this is too simple of a service, but because Aspire supports OpenTelemetry, and Functions supports OpenTelemetry, I'm getting full distributed tracing for every call chain with all the context. So once you're building like serious distributed applications, this is just awesome. I love that. So we've Aspire-ified the function, right? And I could have lots of functions here. It doesn't just have to be HTTP. It can be all the event types. All right, so let's fast forward a little bit.
If you'd AZD up this thing, it would actually go to container apps. It would have a function inside there. The runtime would be running, all the good stuff.
Yep, and I did, in fact, just before this session, I did AZD up it. So if you look here, if you take just this project in AZD up, this is what you get. So you get that container apps environment, that's your cluster. Every function that you have is going to be a container app. And Scott, you talked about this. Functions run natively, but they can also run as a microservice inside a container app with all the same runtime features, but they actually are a container app, so they understand revisions and all the kind of cool things.
And even better, container apps is aware that you're running a function inside of it, and
Yep.
it's going to give you some additional options as well.
Totally. And just like you showed before, it's a container app, but it's a special container app that is Aspire enabled. So also in the cloud, like you showed before, I get automatically this tracing view. And the host name is uglier, right? Because now we're in the, the cattle, not pets sort of environment.
Yep.
But you can see that each instance of a function will just kind of show up here naturally. And again, I'm getting the ring buffer, I'm getting distributed tracing, all the things. So basically, from going from code to cloud, it's really easy. And if there were, for some reason, some initialization problem, I'm going to get the error right here. I remember the dev manager of .NET, and I used to have to RDP into a damn machine to see this stuff.
Well, app service. Back in the days when your ASP.NET app wouldn't start an app service, you would have to go into basically the console inside of app service.
And you do like .NET run.
Manually run the app from the command line.
Yep.
See the error, because the errors don't get displayed anywhere.
So no more .NET run in a bastion. Like now you just do this. It's a lot better. All right, so let's keep going. Let's kind of so we've got, we took kind of the vanilla function and we put it in the cloud. But one of the magics of container apps is that, it is a container. So if I don't want to use the base image, I can go customize and put my own software in here. And this is for me, kind of a magical thing too. So a real customer requirement I get all the time is I want to run custom software like FFmpeg. Do folks use FFmpeg here? So the cool thing is I can add a new dependency like that right inside this Docker file. And then in the app host file, I can say with Docker file, and I can bring this one in. And that's really all I had to do. So it'd be like here.
I think this is pretty cool. Before, you were seeing us just Dockerize things for you on your behalf. In this case, Paul put his own Docker file here, and he's now going to tell Aspire, he wants a container with that Docker file.
I thought I probably have another version or branch that has that one.
Or he may not.
Do you remember off the top of your head? It's the
Nope.
with Docker file?
It's with Docker file, yeah.
Yeah. It's not in the scope. There's probably just one more reference I need to do here. We're living dangerously. OK, so that's what you do for that piece. And we've worked with the AZD team. So if you do hook the Docker file, that works naturally with AZD and with your whole CI/CD process. So that's pretty cool. OK, there's one more thing. Just one. What's that?
Docker file?
Does it publish it?
If the command should be published as Docker file,
Oh.
I think.
Oh, publish.
There you go,
Okay.
publish this Docker file.
Publishes Docker file. Cool. Thank you, Maddie. All right. Next thing, so Scott, you were talking about the scaling behavior of this, right? And when you write an application, the thing I try to do is I use the tiniest hardware I can. In this case, we're using like quarter of a CPU. We're using maybe a gig of memory. It's a small, inexpensive machine. And I don't want a Godzilla. I want that small one. But when I get a lot of load, I actually want scale out. I want a lot of instances. And flex consumption functions, container apps, we can hit 1,000 no problem in under a minute. So I don't know, should we give it a shot, see
Let's
if we
do
can
it.
blow this thing up?
Let's go show the scale settings in the portal.
Yeah, we can do that too. So let's go to, here's the Aspire app, here's the container app. And so the first thing is, in terms of your hardware or scale up, we try not to scale up, but in terms of that, like I'm running a really modest, I guess I was off by half, but this is a really modest CPU spec, right? And then if we go to scale, you can have between 0 and however min and max that you want with a bit of a cooldown. And we have these HTTP scalers or event-driven scalers already built in. So the container app and the functions runtime, they're always monitoring how much traffic there is, and they're giving you the right amount of instances based on that. That's kind of the basic premise.
So if traffic goes up, we'll scale you up, and then as soon as traffic stops, we scale you back down. So you're only paying for that burst that you have happen there.
All right, now let's look at the function. We'll go to the test folder. Thiago, who's also on the team, sitting somewhere in the crowd, he taught me this command, plow. Forgive the name. But so plow, like, it basically, it's like a curl, but it's like a load test curl. It's kind of awesome. So I just lifted the URL for the function app. Actually, if you want to keep me honest. So here we go. Kind of like Magna Rock, but it's Mango Rock. I wouldn't have thought of that. So we're in the Mango Rock instance. So we're going to blow this thing up, and we're going to send like 1,000 clients at it, and let's actually see what happens. So here we'll run the load test, which uses plow. Here we go. So this is kind of awesome in kind of a terminal UI sort of a way. We are spinning up 1,000 clients, and we are beating up this function app. And a couple things I noticed from an operational side, like we are not skipping a beat. We're not getting awful response times. I do want to see why the P99th is that high. But this is good, right? Like we can run this at scale, see exactly where we're at. And then to Scott's point, when we're done sort of being it up with a load test, we can turn it off. And now after that cooldown process, like we saw in the scale down settings, it's going to relax and bring that scale back in. So let's see if we can monitor this thing. So let's go to the metrics. All right, so I picked the HTTP container app. And what would be a couple good ones to look at?
How much you're scaled up, Paul?
Yeah, so let's look at the replica count. A replica is kind of the number of instances. And let's see if I can see it in this resolution. I don't know why I'm getting the circle of patience. Okay, so notice here how as soon as we started traffic during this demo, there wasn't a long lag with broken requests. It shot right up. And let's also look at, let's add another metric. Let's look at requests. And let's add even another metric. Let's look at CPU usage. Right, so we can see we're hitting all those different spikes, but this is a really strong platform, didn't miss a beat. And if I were to run this over and over and refresh it, we're going to see that it's going to cool down and scale down to 0 too. So it's like, to me, this makes me happy. It's like, it's really easy, but you're in complete control and you've got that kind of power. It's kind of hard when it's all, I think it was better before that. Let's see. Maybe take that back out. There's a little bit of lag to see the metrics, so probably in about 2 minutes, I'll see all the metrics.
Yeah, we'll see it jump up.
All right, so we got about 4 minutes. Where do we want to go, Scott?
I don't want to switch laptops because we'll lose your metrics. I would just the big thing I would say is, when is your talk, Maddie?
1:20, I think, in here.
So Maddie's going to be back in this room at 1:20. If you want to see a bunch of are you going to show, there's a whole bunch of cool things that we're doing in .NET. My favorite one is, if you look at Java or C++, you could always just run a single app run a single file. She's got some really cool stuff where you can just .NET run a CS file. So we've been trying to make it smaller and smaller to build your first .NET app. She's also going to talk about the Aspire CLI.
Yeah.
And the Aspire CLI is taking the Aspire platform in some ways even beyond .NET, in my opinion, to languages like Python or JavaScript. All that publishing stuff that you saw, where we were publishing containers, using Azure services, all that security with managed identity and Key Vault, we want to apply that for non.NET languages as well. So you might have a JavaScript front end, you have got a .NET back end, those are fully supported.
Yep.
That's going to be some of the stuff you're going to talk about, I would assume.
Oh, yeah. How to make all your JavaScript coworkers use Aspire. That's basically the whole goal. No. It's a 140. I was close.
I remember I was in a meeting with the Dapper maintainer who does all Go.
Oh.
They want it too.
Yeah, we have it. We have it.
That was awesome.
We'll discuss some. Thanks for the shout out.
By the way, for those of you keeping honest, I couldn't give it enough traffic to even get it to scale out.
Is that the problem? We didn't have enough traffic on the network?
Yeah. Well, I need to run it more, but yeah, this network looks like a DOS attack probably. But,
Yeah, we should have actually had another machine in Azure that we actually hit it with.
Yeah. If you use Azure Cloud Load Test, it does it outside in.
Yeah, we should have done load testing, is what we should have done.
But
So basically, the network here doesn't have enough oomph for him to actually make it really scale crazy. In a perfect world,
we didn't lose requests, so it was actually still doing okay.
But we've actually scaled this thing. We've seen it go up to like over 100 instances in just a very short, just in a minute or so.
Yeah, about 40 seconds.
With that, but as I said,
No, 1,040 seconds. 100 it would do.
it was
in
1,000. You're right. It was 1,000.
100 it'll do in a second.
But we don't have enough network bandwidth here to do that. So.
Yep.
But I would just tell you, as I said, my takeaway is amazing published features exist in Aspire. Great CI/CD support is built into Aspire. Great Azure support is built into Aspire.
Dependencies overall, just bringing dependencies.
Super good. And Maddie's going to talk later today about how we want to bring that to other languages, not just .NET. And my biggest other takeaway is, I didn't show it, but you don't have to start over to use Aspire. Nope. You just right-click on your application in Visual Studio and say Add Aspire Orchestration. In Visual Studio Code, you can do the very similar thing as well. There's a right-click to Aspirify your application.
Yep. This function, it was just another project. We didn't change it at all.
And so that's my takeaway. Try Aspire, use Aspire. I only saw half the hands go up. I want 100% of the hands next year when we're back. So thank you, folks.
Thank you.